Hello, everyone, and welcome to your Daily Detroit. It is Thursday, March 28th, 2024, coming to you from the Daily Detroit studio at Techtown. I am Jer Stays, and joining me to my right is longtime friend of the show, on the show every Thursday. How are you, Norris Howard?
I'm doing well. The Prince of Brightmo has returned. I'm just making sure that I'm recovering. I've been redoing my bathroom all weekend and also laughing heartily at watching Diddy get raided.
You know, we need intro music for you.
Yes, we do need to have
like when you
intro
go up to the
music.
plate or something, maybe like a trumpet, like a royal theme with a trap beat.
Yeah, it'll probably be something like an old T.I. track from like 2006.
And that laugh you hear is to the left of me, none other than Sam Robinson, reporter for Axios. Welcome to your first time on Daily Detroit, sir.
Yeah, inaugural episode. It's been too long. Long-time listener, first time appearing on the show.
When I found out you listened, I felt truly honored, like right here.
Yeah.
It felt really good because I really respect and appreciate all the work that you do. You came to town and like made a splash. You're like, you know what? I may not be necessarily 100% from here, but I am of here, and boom. And I really appreciate that.
Well, feelings are likewise. Doing audio in the way that you guys are, it's been really impressive. Obviously, nobody's doing it at the same level, daily newsletter at Axios.
Yeah.
So that's helped out in terms of ingratiating myself into the city. And yeah, everyone's been really nice to me here. I'm from a little bit of everywhere. I'm from Midland, but I was actually born in Baltimore, Maryland. My mom worked out in Johns Hopkins for 20 years, and she's from here. I got family all across the state, and yeah, west side, east side. I lived in Ann Arbor. This is the first time being in Southeast Michigan. I don't think I'll ever go back. I can't lie. I think I'm a Southeast Michigander for life. Maybe not for life, but for my life now, at least.
For a while.
Yes.
For a while.
I'm
You really
enjoying
never
it.
know what life brings us,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, for a while, for sure.
So, I mean, we could get into a bunch of topics, but I think let's start out with something you brought up recently in that daily newsletter and your regular coverage. You know, it's turning out to be a little bit of a jump ball for governor because, we're all focused on Biden and Trump and what's right ahead of us. But just around the corner of that is already like the buzz building for what's going to happen for governor for the state, which is an important state, a swing state. Lots of people live here. It's up there, isn't it, Sam?
Yeah, we're definitely going to see some announcements regarding the mayor, Mike Duggan, whether he wants to run for another term. A lot of people that you talk to are pretty convinced that he's going to run for governor. You got a lot of other people in Lansing that bring up certain names like Garland Gilchrist, lieutenant governor. You bring up names like the Senate Majority Leader, Winnie Brinks, who Duggan appeared with today in West Michigan, actually. But people talk about Whitmer for president. That was the whole thing. Oh, if Biden somehow went down, could Whitmer take his spot? She, put cold water on that pretty quickly, but never
say never.
Never say. And she's writing a book. And that's what presidential candidates do before they run.
Yeah.
And
I mean, she's not for 2024, but there's no doubt she's next up.
2028, yeah. We will,
Yeah.
I would imagine, hear more about that as the months go on now. And it's 2024 already, so next year we're going to see a campaign.
Yeah, I definitely think for me, she's next up, talking about 2028. And then another couple of names that you threw out there, Jocelyn Benson, of course. And then there's Pete Buttigieg, of course, who has moved to Michigan in recent years with his husband out in the Traverse City
his
area.
family's is from Traverse City.
That's
or
correct.
His husband's family. But it also seemed to be very politically convenient that a guy who, frankly, plays well on Fox News in a purple state shows up. It adds up to me.
It kind of is. You got a guy who, like you said, plays well on Fox, but also entrenched in the current administration. So he kind of has this sort of middle America folksiness to him. He's palatable, I think, for most mainstream voters. That's honestly of both sides of the aisle. I think, a gay executive is not necessarily the non-starter it used to be 20 years ago. So I think that is a potential that we're seeing for the governor's race. But I'm with Sam. I think, right now it seems like Duggan is kind of the only one that their antennas are up for and everybody kind of expects it. But, I mean, it could be crazy if there's not a conclave of the Democratic Party and they make a decision.
I mean, this is going to impact Detroit, though. I think let's bring it to real brass tacks. This will impact Metro Detroit and the city, especially depending on who gets picked. And that also ties into what we've got coming up with the mayor's race at some point here, and who's going to step up for that.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting go of that. Mary Sheffield obviously is far ahead. I would really say Mary and Mike are right now the front runners for Democratic primary and for the governors, and in the mayor's seat. Mary Sheffield is already, she's been fundraising. She's got 6-figure campaign accounts. And, we're going to hear names like Warren Evans, Mary Waters, I'm sure will try to run. Santel Jenkins. We're going to hear people like Solomon Kinloch. We're going to hear people like,
My issue with that, though, is that Mary Sheffield, it feels like she's been in the legislature in the city for forever. It feels like she's been there forever, but she's still relatively a neophyte compared to some of those other names that you said. And I think that's the advantage that she has. Like Warren Evans has been in Michigan politics since I was an actual child, like an actual blubbering child. And, seeing somebody like Mary Sheffield, and it's not necessarily an endorsement. I just think when we're talking about how is Detroit moving forward in the sort of post-Mike Duggan era, how's this sort of wave of quote unquote improvement in energy, how does it continue? I think it only continues with somebody who also has new and forward-thinking energy. And I'm not sure if people like Warren Evans and some of those other names that you said would engage the voter base in the same way.
That said, I don't see any world where the business community backs Sheffield. Sheffield is a very well-known name, and she comes from that pastor family. It's a big deal here. Mm-hmm. But I think the business community is going to put up their own name or get behind somebody. Like if you were to see, I don't have any word on that because it doesn't seem like there's much, but in my mind, I look at someone like a Garland Gilchrist is like a really strong possible candidate for this, who actually understands city government as well and has that experience on the ground. I think that Sheffield has the benefit of having a name that everyone knows, but a background that some people know, but it's not as extensive. So you don't have all the other stuff. But I feel like the business community is yet to speak. And frankly, whoever Duggan endorses, I think is very important because despite the criticism online, he cleans the clock of everybody electorally, and it's for a reason. He does have popularity.
Counterpoint on Mary not being popular with business circles, she did get max contribution from Maroon's son, Matty Maroon and his wife. They're supposed to be more progressive than his dad. But, that'll be, we hear from folks close to the lieutenant governor that he's not interested in the mayor's race. I think Stephen asked him last year on stage, Stephen Henderson asked him as part of the Detroit Regional Chamber Policy Conference 2 years ago about the Senate. Maybe it was last year. I'm forgetting my years. COVID happened and it's all been a blur since. Mm-hmm. But, I do think his eyes are set on the governor's office just because he's seen, the powers. Right. Yeah. And I don't know. I've asked his staff directly, hey, can I talk to LG about Detroit issues? He doesn't want to talk about them.
Well, I think there's a couple things at play. He's got kids, which is always a thing. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised. This is just pure speculation. I mean, I think he's got to have his eyes a little bit higher, but also he could make a ton of money going back to the private sector for a while and then reappear. Yeah. Much like, frankly, you saw Gretchen Whitmer bow out for a while when her kids were younger and then reappear when it was more familially, it would have made more sense for the family. And my gut, knowing how many parents I know involved in politics and that kind of thing, you don't get those years back. And I think that's an X factor I think we need to take into account.
I think so, but I think I'm more so with Sam on this in terms of the business community with Mary Sheffield, just going back to that point. I'm not necessarily sure if the business community would then in turn be more favorable to some of these older candidates, because we got to remember the older candidates were the folks who were in charge or potential candidates.
Oh, they've been doing business with Warren Evans for years.
Yeah, they've been doing business with Warren Evans.
They know what they're getting.
But they know what they're getting, but also at the same time, what was the state of business at the time when they were in charge? It wasn't great. These were not folks who were in charge when Detroit was some bastion of urban renewal, so to speak. I look at the candidacy of somebody like Mary Sheffield and I see the neighborhood she goes into, the events that she's a part of, the people that she chooses to surround herself with. And I think when we're talking about the city of Detroit proper, that is a much more impactful thing, because I'm not necessarily seeing Warren Evans in Brightmo or in Zone 8 or on Linwood.
But everyone
or
knows
on
who he is. He doesn't have to do that work.
I mean, everyone in the world does because he's got his name on the
His
airport.
name's on
Right?
the airport.
Smartest move ever. And also, you see a lot of pro-voting billboards from Janice Winfrey, don't you?
You do. You do.
And when we talk about Garland, we can't forget that he's never won an election. The only election he ran, he lost to Janice Winfrey. So
Yeah. So I think these are all amazing people and great candidates in their own right if they decide to run. But I'm just looking at how the mayoral race and fitting in with the governor's race. I just think that this region is ready to leave behind some of these names, man.
Right.
I think it has to. I think when we're looking at where the region needs to go, I think part of why Gretchen Whitmer was so successful in her 2 campaigns was the fact that she, even though she's legacy, we know that, but to the average person, she wasn't a part of this apparatus of these same names that we heard of all the time. I think that's a huge benefit in the current electorate now, both in the governor's race and in the mayoral race.
But she's also a heck of a candidate. And
Yes.
I don't think we can discount that. I think about some of the House rep races and things like that, where you've got people starting to say, hey, I want to throw in my hat for, say, Shri Tanadar's seat and things like that. Here's the deal. Nobody outside of the city of Detroit knows who a bunch of these candidates are, and these districts are not just in the city of Detroit. And when you
Facts.
drive down 94, you see Shri's face smiling at you constantly. Where are these people's billboards? Where is the messaging? If you're running, you need to start now because your race is not just in Detroit and it's not just in political circles.
Yeah.
I feel like if you want to go at an incumbent, even somebody like him, who there's been lots of documented stuff where people are mad at him, name recognition matters. And I don't know if people realize you just got to spend and do it.
you remember, did James Craig have billboards as chief? Did he have his face on a billboard?
I don't
I
recall.
don't remember his face. I know his name was on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, his name was on a lot of
And
stuff.
I just imagine a Mary Sheffield versus James Craig
Oh,
mayoral
jeez.
debate. Like, what would that look like?
Oh my God.
You know, because people say, "Oh, doesn't James Craig have a with the older folks?" I was like, "No,
No.
like the voting, no,
Not Chief
Yeah,
Hollywood.
and so-
he has no chance."
He has no chance. And so here's the thing. There is a difference between accepting someone for a specific job going, hey, he's going to be police chief. He's going to be a bit more conservative. It was clear to me, at least. I know other people were surprised, but to me, it always was clear his political stripes. Like, you just see him speaking at events and speaking about gun control. Like, of course he's a conservative.
right,
If you put
right.
it, if you're not too close and you look at it objectively, because I wasn't too close. I just looked at what he said and went, that guy's a Republican.
Right.
It's just that simple.
Yeah.
There is a stretch of that in Detroit. There's a streak of conservatism in Detroit, but there's a difference between, hey, you're here to do that one job versus running the thing.
I wouldn't even go so far as to call it a streak of conservatism. I just think the black voter electorate is just more moderate than people want to say that it is.
Like once every 6 months, I end up talking to a white progressive who doesn't understand why Detroit doesn't vote more progressively. And it's like, have you ever been in a Detroit church?
It's not even just the church. I just think fundamentally, like, many black voters are just more moderate than people tend to give them credit for. They're socially liberal. They want everybody to have rights, but almost 90, this is very anecdotal. There's no science behind this number I'm about to throw out, but 90% of the black folks I talk to and have grown up around are either gun owners or pro-gun ownership.
Sure.
Right? There's other things that they are more conservative about. They don't necessarily like frivolous spending. They don't want, programs to be put up for ridiculous reasons. Or if they're small business owners, they tend to have a different viewpoint on the economy and whatnot. So I think when we're talking about stuff like that, we do also have to be careful. I don't think James Craig has no chance.
Right.
I think he has little chance, but I think you're right. If he does go into the religious community in the city of Detroit, I think it will give him a boost, especially up there in District 1, where we know that's a bastion of Greater Grace Temple, the largest church pretty much in all of Detroit. And that would be a foothold for him. However, I think when you have somebody like Mary Sheffield and what she represents, if these two run and it becomes a head-to-head between those two, I just think what she's done and her visibility over the past few years just kind of puts her in a different echelon for many other potential candidates.
I agree. And let me cushion my own no chance with, we saw in 2016 that there is no such thing as no chance. And with these polls, I mean, you see Biden's down 10 and it's like, did you guys not live through 16 when Trump was down 15 the days before the election? Like, I just...
do we not believe polls anymore?
No.
I don't know.
Okay,
I'm very curious about Sam's thoughts because I'm
Sam.
like, Sam's actually like an expert, so we should be quiet and listen to him.
Not just as an expert, but I have a question. Have you ever been polled?
Yeah.
How many times?
They call me all the time. Like,
well, you're visible, so that makes sense.
They call me all the time and I don't participate because of my job. So I have to read like, the methodology. And when you understand it, a lot of times I have to ask somebody. I'll call like, the media contact with the organization that ran the study to just be like, well, how did you guys actually do this? Because they don't really put it in layman's terms for folks to get.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
No.
So are polls real? Yes. They are real. Are they as valuable as cable network? No, they're not. They're not as valuable as I think. And I think we can say that pretty confidently. I mean, some polls though are better than others. And you can see it with the margin of error. So
yeah, I mean, just anecdotally, like I can count on my hand how many times I've been polled, and they called it was when I was registered to vote for Obama. It was that year. And they called because I was registered, and they called my mom's landline. I know they don't do that so much anymore, but if that was an indicator of the next 20 years of polling, then no, you're almost never going to get young people to respond to polls. They already don't answer the phone on average. And if you send it in an email or text or anything else, there's a low chance that you're going to get responses. So I'm with Sam. Polls, we can't listen too hard about it.
That leads me to think about the topic of apathy. Is that something that we're seeing more of this year? Not just about a candidate, but of the process.
See, I'm interested, especially Sam, to get your perspective on this because you're a bit younger than me, and I think speaking for the sort of staunchly millennial crew, I don't feel like we're apathetic at all. I feel like of people my age range, we're incredibly engaged, probably too engaged, honestly. I feel like we can't unplug. I feel like we can't not talk about politics, whereas, at least from my viewpoint, I feel like the younger generation, Gen Zs, millennials, and stuff like that, I feel like they're engaged when they need to be and not engaged when it comes to the sort of day-to-day discourse. I don't know, Jer, how's it coming from your side?
I mean, I'm older.
Yeah.
Most of my friends have kids, and they're busy. A lot of them have already made their decisions. Like, they know where they're going. I think that when it comes to a certain kinds of issues, like things around women's issues. I don't know if y'all ever have dated anybody before, but most people I've dated who are women do not forget anything. And one of the things they will not forget is somebody trying to take their rights away.
Yeah.
And I think that there are various voting blocks like that the Republicans will never be able to touch because that's like a permanent thing that's in people's minds. And I think there's a lot of people my age who have made up their mind. There's always like an undecided part. But frankly, like they've got their jobs, they got their life, they got whatever. They're dealing with whatever they need to deal with, and they're going to get a lot more engaged when we get a few months in. And for the most part, most people I know, they've made up their decision. There's no debating one way or another for them. They're pretty clear in their minds what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on my end, it is apathy. I mean, you have a generation of kids who are, charged up. Like, we care about stuff, but it's to the point of we're seeing how our parents had a more comfortable life than ours. And it's to the point of like, oh, so our kids are going to have a more uncomfortable life than ours. And my life was already pretty uncomfortable. So when you see these headlines talk about Gen Z is so depressed, Gen Z is this and that, it's interesting. We do not care. Like, we do not care. And that whole like post George Floyd 2020 and really amid George Floyd, because there's a lot of skeptics. I mean, there's a lot of people further, drifted away from the Democratic Party who probably were resentful of their parents' style of liberal democratism, under Obama, in white and black households. Like, I just hear from a lot of left leaning people who aren't Democrats, who don't vote, but are highly political. The Gen Z intellectual will be no advocate for any kind of party, you know what I'm saying? Views these parties as the same. Obviously, I think history repeats itself.
We've been there.
Yeah,
we've been there.
And I remember these years.
I was gonna say, to the point of we'll get there, but I just I see less people participating in politics than your generation by big time. Like, millennials do. And like when I interact in Lansing and when I'm, around the city and stuff, it's like there are a lack of black women under 25 in government.
In anything political.
Okay, there's a lack of young people in government because, look, I am the oldest person at this table.
Right.
And yet often, and we've mentioned this before, but I mentioned it for you, Sam, I am both the oldest person in some rooms and then also the youngest.
Right.
Yeah.
And I am in my 40s.
Yeah.
Like, I look at that Growing Together Council, and it's led up by people who literally could be my parents. And I'm like sitting there going, we need to broaden this out a little bit. And we need to have more people where at least, like, I don't understand all of Gen Z's needs. I, of course, wouldn't. But at least I feel like I know more Gen Z's than somebody who's in their 70s and can, like, at least listen a little bit.
At least listen.
Listen better than the giant gulf that we're talking about of parents to grandparents.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we have 2 senior citizen nominees for president right now. We're not participating in it. I mean, you can see it in Detroit, our voter turnout. But you really see it across the country in these elections, man. We do not vote. People under 25 just have no motivation to vote. Why should we? We don't pay property taxes. Like, we have nothing to vote for.
That was the case when I was at that age too, though.
Right.
I think that's one thing to think about. Then it also makes me think deeper about all these fears around, well, are young people not going to turn out, whatever? Were they going to turn out anyway? And is that part of the calculus that, like, the Democratic Party is making?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. If you had a different candidate, you probably would have a different conversation and narrative around the race right now. But the same could be said on the other side. 2 very popular candidates. Biden has his own fan club. Trump has his own fan club, right? But it's just such a different style.
It's a different energy.
Yes, and Trump's bodes better for this current, wherein Biden's voted better for him in 2020.
Yeah, and it's a little more fragmented on the Democratic side as opposed to the Republican side. And as we all know, if you follow politics, the right seems to get on code quicker. They seem to just, this is what we're doing.
Trump was at the sneaker rally, and I thought that was a big deal, a big symbolic thing, because it really was like, post Kanye being that. I'm telling you, like, I see it in 18, 19. I had a kid, it was a tweet that went viral. I literally had a kid tell me at a music studio in Detroit, 21-year-old kid, talented. He's never listened to College Dropout or Late Registration.
Oh my God.
Because those are woke. Those albums are woke.
No.
So you have this generation that's like so many different, they're watching the streamers like Aiden Ross and I Show Speed and Kai Cenat. And these people are pretty adjacent to conservative thinking.
And remember, Jared, that's what I said a couple episodes ago. I don't know if I said it on air, but in passing, I said conservatism is counterculture now. Conservatism is the cool thing to be.
It is. It 100% is, and it will continue to be until something happens. And I don't really foresee that happening. So culturally, Republicans and conservatives, it's a sweep. They've won Gen Z. Like Gen Z, which is crazy to think about because I think national media spin is like, these kids care about climate change. No, we don't. Like, I don't know. Like, truthfully, like, no, like, we don't have enough money. Like, we're $30,000 in debt, all of us at the minimum.
And frankly, it is on us and older generations that it should never be a situation in our country that the generations after us do worse than us. We should always be looking forward to do better. And anybody my age or older has to really ask themselves how we got here and how we can fix it, because we're not done yet. Like, I'm the old man at the table, but my generation is not done yet. We've got a lot of opportunity to make change. And frankly, and no offense to the younger folks, but closer to the chalice of power in time, we've got a responsibility to turn this ship around. And I think that we can, but we have to think about it in that more holistic way of like, people need to be able to take care of themselves. I look at things like, people not wanting to have kids. That isn't, to me, not always. Everyone has their own obvious choices and whatever. But in the general sense, to me, that's an indicator of optimism.
But more people would have kids if they had things to look forward to, and if our country made it easy for you to have kids. Like, this is very simple. People have kids in many other countries because you are incentivized to want to start families, whether it be through paid time off, free healthcare, free education.
I don't understand why conservatives don't get behind that, because apparently they're all about the family.
That's another
That's my own
episode, Jer.
snark.
That's another episode. But I want to get back in terms of the apathy thing, because at least for me as a millennial, I saw Gen X as the poster children for apathy. Gen X was the apathetic generation, and it emboldened us to say we don't want to be like that. Because as we were growing up and we just saw you guys not be active, not take to the streets when stuff was happening, not get involved in politics. So we were like, Obama comes around and now we have this chance. Like, that was the first president I voted for, was Barack Obama. And that was true for many millennials. Imagine the context that you were in as a young adult going, I could do this. We did this. You know what I'm saying?
You're also freed by social norms that we had that you guys didn't.
That's true.
Like,
of
I
every
remember
younger generation.
Right,
though.
right. Like, I remember working at places where if I got photographed with a drink in my hand, I could be fired. Right? Like, we had a lot of social norms and workplace norms where it's like, oh, you work for any kind of job that pays you any real money, you got to shut up.
Yeah,
it's just straight.
But I
facts.
just think, as we see, because Gen Z are the children of Gen X. So if you have an apathetic generation that then birthed a bunch of apathetic kids, it makes sense to me. And then you have that generation in the middle being millennials, who were the kids of baby boomers, who were incredibly politically active and currently set the agenda for all political discourse in the entire country. It's still boomers. Gen X hasn't set shit in the country.
Right.
I think it's just really interesting looking at how not just generationally certain things have been inherited, but I think also, Sam, to your point, and why it's so difficult, I think, for Gen Z to make those connections, is I think they don't see the political system paying dividends for them, right? I was in college and was about to run out of money in my senior year, and Obama renewed the Pell Grants. That's how I got through college. That is me directly benefiting from the person I voted for. I think Gen Z has not had that experience yet.
I am the year, so 96. I think you can either be one or the other. I'm a true Gen Z, but 1 year behind of I could be a millennial. And so my old Gen Zs, because I'm old already, you know what I'm saying? Like, people that are young are like 17 to 21 right now.
Yeah.
I had my parents' Blue Cross Blue Shield until I was 26.
Yeah.
So I felt that, and I saw like, oh my gosh, yeah, like I don't have to pay for, like, nope, I don't, going through your jobs and like, oh, they offer you insurance,
You'd
no.
be like, I'm good.
Yeah. Now I gotta pay for it. Like,
Yeah.
it's not that much, but I could imagine that it is if you needed healthcare
Right.
often,
Right.
taking like the lowest possible,
Yeah,
for $60 a paycheck or whatever. But we haven't gotten anything out of politics. You hear accomplishments listed off, you hear infrastructure, and the economy and inflation relief, and you look around, everything is expensive, and the messaging is really, I think, in my personal opinion, not what is going to win over new people.
I want to mention, because we have been playing with these coasters. At the Daily Detroit studio, look, I am a sucker for a freebie. Hint, hint, audience. And one of those freebies was these Residents at Water Square Detroit coasters. They're actually by Pingree Detroit, which has been around a minute. They do like shoes and a bunch of other leather goods and whatever. I want to get your thoughts on it because you cover the city, and the Residences at Water Square, out of all of the developments, seems to get the most conversation going because it's unabashedly luxury. There is no affordable housing. You see this in so many things. It stands out because it's like, you know what? You need money to live here.
No broke people living here.
Right.
Yeah,
and so
right.
there's like a swagger and a step to that.
Right.
I wondered what you thought about it because you definitely are like embedded with things, covering things all the time.
Right. So I'm on Gabriela Santiago Romero, council member, District 6, her Instagram, and I'm seeing all these comments, and she posts a picture. It's this union-made structure. It's going to have 496. It's the largest, to my understanding, the most units. I think there's a few old ones like Alden Towers on Jefferson.
Yeah, I think it's
and
the largest new residential development in the city in the past 25 years, I believe.
And so will be the hotel with 500,
Like
rooms
moving
in
at the
that
density
hotel,
that a city moves
right
at.
there. So they're doing the CBO agreements over the hotel that's going to be the sister mirror building right there. This is on the other side of the Huntington Place, right near the river there. And I'm looking at Gabby's Instagram comments, and I'm like, oh my gosh, these people are going crazy over these $10,000 apartments. The Detroit Free Press and J.C. Riedel, their headline for this story, ours kind of was, but it kind of wasn't. It appeared in the newsletter as like $10,000 apartments, but it appeared online as Water Square Residences at Water Square opened up. So when I talked to these people doing this tour for the story, They were like, yeah, we appreciated your headline that you didn't sensationalize us, because they went and Phil Lewis tweeted it out, and it got a bunch of people asking. Right, shout out to him, asking, where are the affordable? Why are these developers not building affordable housing? Well, apparently they don't find it lucrative enough to do that, and so that's why they need to ask the city for a bunch of tax money to do it. But Water Square residences, I think, is a good thing. There was just a report on Cranes this week talking about luxury apartments actually benefit affordable housing markets in cities. In my head, a thriving city has rich people in it. I don't know about you guys, but
Yeah.
I would like to see, when I'm walking downtown, maybe not past Water Square residence, but just in my imaginary head, a Detroit where the singer of the group is walking down the street downtown. Like, I would like to see a Detroit where maybe I'm going to see Cade Cunningham shop at Exhibition in Capitol Park one day. Like, I would like to see a Detroit where these rich people have places to go in the city.
Yeah.
That they can put their head down. Yeah. And as far as I understand from the management company, what they tell me is that is exactly what they're aiming for. They're aiming to bring in, people that are here temporarily, or people that are here just for a certain thing, or just people that have several different luxury apartments across the United States. It's a beautiful apartment. My issue is the windows don't open. Pressurized building.
Very specific, which, by the way, I share with you, but that's also one of the reasons you won't see me live in a high rise, because I do like the windows open. Also,
Facts.
I have a dog, an elevator dog time. You can do it. People do it. But I really like just being able to be out there in my PJs, go do your thing kind of situation.
There's a groomer. They have a pet.
Groomer in the building?
That's
hard.
There's going to be a new market that's open for the public at the bottom, ground level of this building. So, I mean, there will be public amenity offered, and you're going to see residents now coming out of that building and then walking to the Riverwalk. Because it's right there. And right on that Steve Eisenman Drive, where the old arena was. And Water Square now has their logos, emblem on the People Mover.
Yeah.
I think, rich people in Detroit is good. Obviously, you would love for developers to focus on real people like me and all of y'all, because, we can't afford to live downtown anymore. I can't even afford to live downtown anymore. And it's a real shame. It's a real shame that these apartments that are not worth $1,500, $1,600, $1,700 a month for a one bedroom are that much. It's a shame. But hey, developers got to make their money back to their investors somehow, man.
Yeah, they do. The only positive I'm going to try to spin on it, because I agree, I think rich people should live in the city, and I think we should want that. We should openly court that. But I think the one thing I will say is that for every other developer that can't build that kind of high rise, build elsewhere.
Right.
Because we need it.
Right.
There's giant swaths of land waiting to be used in the city, and people will live in there.
And we want rich people here, but we want them here responsibly.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And I think a lot of people have, this real kind of uncomfortable feeling going downtown now a little bit, because they're like, man, is this Ann Arbor? Is this Grand Rapids?
Yeah.
I go to Chicago now. I'm in Logan Square, and I'm like, man, 7 years ago, this was a whole Hispanic. Now it's Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
not all of Logan Square Avenue, but
Did you see a DeVos? That's the real question.
Chicagoans know. DeVos owns property down there in Chicago, right?
Oh, I'm sure.
Right down there. I walked past one of their homes once. I looked up the home. It was a great Chicago story. I was like, oh my gosh, interesting. Yeah,
it's wild that
Chicago, my Detroit.
Right,
But it's wild that you look at places. Last time I went to Chicago, I looked at some apartments in Wicker Park, just on the app, right? Just scrolling through. I didn't go tour them, and I'm like, wait a second. That's close to what I'd pay in Detroit.
Right.
And Wicker Park has all kinds, it's no place is perfect.
There's a Supreme store.
Right.
There is.
Right. Everybody gets on me whenever I say anything about another area, nitpicking it. And you know what? No area is perfect. But the idea of all the amenities and everything that are there along with the transit for near the same price, you're sitting there going, and it's not like Chicago taxes are cheap or nothing.
Right.
Right. There are comparable experiences. If we're going to have these prices, it is what it is. Housing's gotten so much more expensive at this point. But the rest of the pieces need to be filled in.
No,
I guess.
I feel you. And I feel that way anytime I go elsewhere. I was in California recently, in San Diego, one of my favorite cities in the country. And same deal. You want a nice new apartment? I mean, brand new, built 2022. Oh, yeah, here. Studio, 1,800. Here you go. I'm like, excuse me, in California, a studio for 1,800? They're like, yeah. I'm like, what? It's because they're not worried. They're going to fill it. They're
Right.
going to get the money.
Right.
People want to live there, and it is what it is.
That's the lowest price of the Water Square resident, $1,800 for a studio.
Yep.
That's the lowest
and I'm
right
just
here.
like, San Diego, Detroit. San Diego,
Right,
Detroit.
right.
We'll get all this pushback, but I know listeners of this show who are moving into Water Square.
Sure, yeah,
and they're
exactly.
moving for very specific
No diss,
reasons.
we love
No,
y'all.
yeah.
You know, like there is a thing with, say, security, especially for
Yeah.
single women or sometimes couples or families who are like, hey, you know what? I have the resources to do it. I want to be in a place where I'm not on the first floor. Like that's a real,
Yeah.
that's a real thing for people.
No, I love it. And like Sam said, we want rich people in the city responsibly. And you do need somewhere to live. If you're, a firmly, $5, 6, 7, $800,000 a year type family, yeah, I can see why you wouldn't necessarily want to live in an 80-year-old building.
Okay, this is
Right.
just Detroit culture stuff, but the second Cade Cunningham or any of those people show up in it, this whole conversation is going to drop.
It's moot.
It's
Right.
going to drop.
It's moot.
This whole conversation is going to drop because people are going to be like football.
Yep.
Right. And that's all it takes is having the one, oh my gosh, I saw this ex-famous person that, they must live in this building, walk out on the Riverwalk. That's all it would take.
That's all
Is
it
this how we
takes.
get Ryan Gosling back?
I'm telling you.
Well,
just
that in the film incentive.
celebrities roaming Detroit. Mike Duggan yesterday said JJ McCarthy and I think Blake Corum, two former Michigan players that won the national championship. They're going to be downtown, around downtown. And in my head, I'm just like, they're just going to be walking around. Like,
Yeah.
Just
No, what's going to happen is Idris Elba is going to be here for movement in a couple months, and he's going to see that tower. He's going to buy it. You're going to see Idris Elba walking in Detroit Riverwalk.
DJ set on the roof.
A DJ set on the roof of the water tower, and that's all it's going to take. That's all it's going to take. Imagine that with the backdrop. You got Windsor in the back. It's going to look beautiful.
Oh man, have you seen the finished rendering? I don't know if it's like finished. I went up there when it was incomplete.
Same,
and it was
same,
beautiful. It was really like they say international views. They're not lying. It is an international view. You get a really really great view. I think Book Tower's view. Oh my gosh, might even be better though. And you don't get the river.
You think it's better than Book Towers?
that
Because
Book-
I love Book Towers.
I
view
love Book
at that
Tower.
rooftop bar they got.
Yeah.
See, that's where I would pick if I had the coin because I love that lobby and I just want to go down and serve my fat self with big old bread rolls every day.
Parking would be hard though. I think
Yeah.
people canned me for saying that parking wasn't hard the other day. I went on live on
I
Twitter
remember
live,
that.
and I went
saw
and found
that.
a bunch of parking spaces right without even looking.
Well, if you got the coin to live there, though, you're just getting your own space in the garage nearby or something like that, right?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I've never paid for parking in my life living anywhere. Never paid for parking. I never
Really?
want to. Yeah, I'm gonna. Well, I don't know. I really don't know.
It's inevitable. I'm telling you.
Yeah, that's what they say.
So not even at a meter. Are you saying parking?
Oh, yeah.
No,
I
he's
mean, I
saying
don't.
like
I'm
a
not
parking
legal.
pass.
Okay.
Yeah, he's saying
Yeah.
like parking past parking.
I've paid for parking to the city of Detroit. I've paid hundreds, if not thousands, in parking
Thousands.
tickets at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, not thousands, hundreds. My Joel Landy, that's why we didn't have parking, is because he was a nice guy. And now that parking lot that was Faux Lucky's, symbolic parking lot, it's been taken away and replaced by a park right right there on Charlotte. And all of the customers, the Faux Lucky customers, walk in there and are like, what the heck? What? $40 to park at Faux Lucky's? Like, no, that's not Faux Lucky,
Yeah.
and they're pretty upset about that. And
It's all bad.
it is all bad. I live in one of the last midtown natural occurring market is I think the phrase that the city used to say like not subsidized, lower market rate. you know?
Yeah.
And
But not rent controlled. And
right. And it's going away now. I moved in when I first moved to Detroit, 2021, $900 in the Addison apartment, 6th floor, great view. Would tweet it out every day and would love it. $1,470.
Damn.
They're trying to charge me $1,570. I want people to all know this. This is a failure. I mean, you should not be pushing out people who are able, like, bro, like
You have a job.
You are gainfully employed.
right? Like, and this is what it is. Could I adjust my budget each month to take $100 less? But at this point, it feels insulting.
Yeah.
'Cause no amenity has changed. I know what's going on. Ugh.
No, I feel you. And just to close, I am glad you brought that up because the more we talk about affordable living and the more we talk about new development in the city, and obviously it's a national conversation, but definitely in the city of Detroit, we are not Chicago and we are not San Diego and we are not a lot of these cities. So up in rent from $900 to almost $1,500 is untenable. You cannot sustain that for what the population of the city is now. What they're trying to do is plan for the future residents, but those future residents may never come.
Right.
We should talk a lot about attainability and affordability. And obviously, there is the context of the very affordable, or that you're making almost no money, or you're in the 20s or whatever. But this conversation, I think going forward, needs to be a lot more complex and include a lot more of what you're talking about, where it's not just like the Section 8 heavily subsidized stuff, but like, hey, I just want to live.
Yeah.
Right? I just want to live. And I think that's what's going to encourage the retail, the restaurants, all the other things that people are saying lately that we're having trouble keeping or trying to shift or whatever. I think that's what's going to do it. Is we've got to bring stuff online at large scale that has that affordable, attainable, accessible price point.
Because how am I
Right.
supposed to go and patronize all these restaurants and push for getting a Target in this town when I literally can't afford it? You're charging me almost $2,000 a month to just live. And so now I can't afford to go patronize the restaurant you want to put at the bottom of the apartment building. It's ridiculous. So it's incredibly short-sighted. And I think if the city is going to continue to grow, all of it's got to be rethought, and got to balance it out a little bit. And, you know, that's a national thing, but we got to balance it
They're
out.
complex issues.
It is. But that is a place that I think Daily Detroit succeeds. Sam Robinson, Axios, thank you so much. I hope this isn't your last time here.
It will not be. I'll be back.
All right, we'll find you
Thank
somewhere.
you guys for having me on. I appreciate it.
I'll look for the drone in the sky, and I'll be like, okay, he's over there. We'll go grab him for a show. We'll just like, hey, man,
We get some drone promo photos for you guys or something, right?
anytime. We are totally down for that. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
All right, well, with that, I am Jer Stays.
I'm Norris Howard.
Thank you so much for listening to your Daily Detroit. Remember, 5 stars on your favorite podcast app, and that you are somebody. Take care of each other, and we'll talk tomorrow.